In this particular session of the political processes in an organization, we will discuss about the what is the politics is there, when is the political activity is used, and using the soft power and the politics. These tactics for the increasing the power and the political text for the using the power is there. We will be also discussing the case study, research paper, book recommendations as usual, and then the further references. So, offline politics is the ecosystem by which the things get done and the decisions get made, and therefore, in that case in the office it is always the organization, any organization is having the power and politics also. So, power and politics they go together. So, this office politics is the part of that ecosystem. So, therefore, in that case the decisions which are made into the organization they are having the certain equations also. So, what is this politics is? So, politics is this like a power is intangible and difficult to measure. It is hidden from the view and is hard to observe in a systematic way. And, therefore, two surveys uncovered the following reactions of the managers towards the political behavior. The first one is the most managers have a negative view forward politics and believe that the politics will more often hurt than help an organization in achieving its goals. Managers believe second opinion is that political behavior is common in the practically all organizations are there. So, therefore, it will depend on the culture of the organizations and the behavior of the managers. Actually, this culture that flows from the top to bottom. In the organization, the top management, if it allows the politics in the organization, then definitely in that case whole organization will be having that culture of the politics is there. There will be the certain organizations in which they do not allow this politics and therefore, in that case they will find that is they believe that is this is the a negative dimension. And if an organization when the politics introduces then there will be the negative decision making also. But when we see the mythology and then we see the Mahabharata and Sri Krishna style of the Lord Sri Krishna style of the leadership, and then we find that is the in these whenever you are into the competition or you are into the war, there is for the betterment of all, if the politics is required for betterment of society, then survival of the organization, then definitely in that case you will find that is politics is allowed. So, there are the certain opinions to support the politics and there are the certain managers those who are not in support of the politics is there. Most managers think that the political behavior occurs more often at the upper rather than the lower level in the organizations. So, therefore, this is also an important dimension whether the politics is applicable to top, middle and the lower management, or it is having that particular top level only function. So, there many managers believe political behavior arises in certain decision domains such as the structural like for example, organizational structure. When you are making because of the politics you change the designing of the organization structure, and when you change the design of the organization structure then definitely with as we have talked in the previous sessions the authority, power and position, all the three factors changes, and if this change is because of the politics then definitely it is the changing of the structure through the politics will create a particular culture in the organization, but is absent from the other decisions are there. So, maybe this is only limited to the organization designing, organization structure, curtailing the power and authority of somebody and enhancing the power and authority of others. So, such as handling employees grievances are there. So, in that case you see that is whenever you are interacting with the employees, then in that case some managers believe that is this politics we have to keep away. So, definition of the power has been the described as the available force or the potential for achieving the designed outcomes are there. So, here we will find that is the when the power is used for the purpose of this designing use of to influence the decisions in order to achieve those outcomes are there. The exercise of power is to influence others has led to two ways to define politics, as a self-serving behavior or as a natural organizational decision process is there. Now, you see, wherever you are working, you have to understand that is what is the culture, what are the practices are there, how decisions are taken in the decision making process, what are the dimensions which are influencing your decisions are there. So, therefore, it is the exercise is two ways of the defining this is there. So, maybe it is about the self behavior. So, sometimes it may not be in the organization, but because of the self-serving behavior is there, and as a self-serving behavior you will find that is it is a natural organizational decision, it becomes the a natural process. And the first definition emphasizes that the politics is self-serving and involved in the activities that are not sanctioned by the organization. And here it will find that is the activity which are the not sanctioned by the organization, but the people at their level only they do it. Now, you see there will be the consequences of this type of behavior, because when there is no politics in the organization and the some of the employees they emphasize on politics and they involve the politics in their decision making, it will be very situational and contextual, that is whether they will be becoming the successful or not, because the organization may not like that. An organization will understand that is a certain decisions are taken on the basis of the intentions of the self-serving behavior, which is not appreciated normally by the top management is concerned. So, politics involves the deception and the dishonesty for the purpose of the individual self interest and leads to conflict and the disharmony within this work environment is there. So, when it is not supported by the organization is not liking this type of the behavior. So, what will happen? It will be destroying by the conflicts and by the disharmony. So, therefore, in that case it will raise more and more conflict is there and the person will be exposed. So, now we have to see where to apply and where not to apply that politics. So, studies have shown that the workers who pursue political activity within their companies often have related feeling of the anxiety and the job dissatisfaction is there. This is also the another dimension where the why people play politics. The people play politics when they are dissatisfied, when they are having the job dissatisfaction and they are having this anxiety, they are having that active and negative role is there. So, therefore, when we see like this, that is the active and passive, positive and negative. So, if this job satisfaction is there, so person is the active and there is and if is positive, then definitely what he will do? He will search for the jobs at the outside will be there, because he understands this is organization where politics is going on and I cannot continue with this particular politics. So, therefore, what he will do? So, he will resign. So, he will be going out. So, employees turnover will be high, very high employees turnover, right. But in the case of the person is negative, then in that case he will create more problems and he will not resign at the workplace only. So, although the politics can be used as a negative self-serving way, the appropriate use of politic behavior can serve the organizational goals also. As I was giving the example of the Mahabharata and in the Ramayana also. So, therefore, in that case we find that is the way a king has to rule, the way a king has to win the war, then in that case he has to find out the ways, and in those ways one of the ways is the politics is there. So, we can't say that is the politics is always a negative term is there. The second view is the politics is a natural organizational process for resolving the differences among the organizational interest groups are there. So, it is a natural organizational process is there by this the politics is concerned, and then therefore, for resolving this type of these differences then naturally it is required, that is there will be the certain groups will be there. Here I would also like to connect with the parallel process of the grievance or conflict handling, and the grievance handling is there, and then in that case there is a separate group is there, those who are responsible for resolve the grievances. However, that is a legal aspect and compulsion aspect, but when we are talking about this politics and there are other differences of the opinions because of this type of the organizational climate of dimension, then in that case organizational interest groups can be developed, those who will be taking care of where the politics is going on in the organization. So, political behavior can be either a positive or a negative force. So, politics is the use of the power to get the arms off. So, therefore, it is the always we have to see that is the whether you are able to play politics or not, and what is the organization culture, and that should not be the self-serving behavior, and that should be towards the supporting to achieving the organizational goals. As I mentioned, when your the canvas is large, it is not for the self interest, but you are playing the politics for the survival of the organization. You are playing the politics so that the organization can perform in a better way and in a right ethical way. Then in that case politics will not be a negative term. It means that the politics can be positive, politics can be negative. So, politics is a mechanism for arriving at the consequences when uncertainty is high and there is a disagreement over the goals or the problem priorities. So, here we recall the rational versus the political models are there. So, the political model is associated with the conflict over goals and the shining correlations and the interest groups, ambiguous information and uncertainty is there. And thus political activity tends to be the most visible then managers control monogram decisions and is related to the Carnegie model of the decision making is there. So, we have talked about this model in our previous session. So, here we have to understand whenever there are these type of the practices are there, then the confront non-program decisions are to be taken care of, so that it will be related to the decision making process will be there. Because managers at the top of the an organization generally deal with the more non-program decisions anytime any situation arises. So, therefore, one is that is the as per your organizational goals, objective, process, procedure, budgeting, the work is going on. Other side is this, that is the there are the situational and like the social issues, political issues, economical issues. So, therefore, if such issues arises, so we will say they are the non-program issues, and when there are non-program issues are arising, so decisions are to be taken. And then to managers at a lower levels more political activity will appear at the higher levels. So, therefore, here it has been when non-program decisions are there, so it will be always found that is the more political activity is there at the higher level to curb that particular issue or that problem. So, structural reorganization strike at the level of the power and authority relationship is there. Now, here as I mentioned, that is the whenever there is a politics, so there will be attention on the power, authority and relationships. So, therefore, here when this type of the situation arises, then the politics will be there, and then somebody will like to raise somebody's position, somebody would like to have the lower positions. So, reorganization, change responsibilities and the task which has affected the underlying the power base from the strategic the contingencies are there. So, here we have to see that is what is the base from the for your strategies, whether the you are going for the making those responsibilities and challenges, or you want to come away from this particular responsibility and the challenges are there. So, manager may actively bargain and negotiate to maintain the responsibilities and the power base they have. So, mergers and acquisition also frequently create tremendous political activity is there. Now, in the economy turbulence, we see that is the many organizations either acquiring the small organization, other organizations, or they are getting into the merge into the another organization. So, these organizational mergers and acquisition, that is also affecting the culture and the practices of the organization, and which is creating the politics more. So, whenever this type of the situation arises of the mergers and acquisition, then politics becomes more important. So, organizational changes such as hiring new executives, promotions and the transfers have great political significance is there, and particularly at the top organizational levels where the uncertainty is high and the networks of the trust, cooperation and communication among executives are important. So, therefore, in that case all these dimensions and when there is a critical issue of the transfer or promotion, then definitely all these dimensions that will influence the decision making process. While influencing the decision making process, there will be the politics also. So, normally we will see that is this type of the issues, the HR or the self serving issues, the decisions are taken at the top management level. So, people try to influence the top management level, and maybe by the right practices or maybe by the wrong practices will be there. If it is by these right practices, then definitely in that case you will find it is called the positive politics, and the politics that stops the evils or the bad emotions. But when the politics is negative, then definitely it destroys more toward to the organization. The third area of political activity is the resource allocations are there. That is what type of the resources are there. For example, giving more manpower, for example, giving one department more money, or changing the methods which may be destroy the organizational process or the enhance the organizational process, may be the positive negative both. So, resource allocation decisions encompasses all resource required, the organizational performance is there. Here the including the salaries, the operating budgeting employees, office facilities, equipments, use of these company and these airplane and so forth is there. So, here you will find that is the these type of the issues where we talk about whether the office facilities are to be provided or not to be provided. Now, here I would like to mention one thing to add on this particular point, that is the whenever there is a politics related to the resources, my submission is manage your own resources. And for you manage your own resources, you require money, and to so therefore, in that case whenever you are performing the best, so you go for these the promotional practices positively with the positive politics, and the career growth is there, and then maybe the diversified activities which may allow you to earn more at your workplace ethically. So, therefore, in that case focus on that is how I can manage my resources, because ultimately it is a game of resources, dear friends. So, when the somebody will play politics, what will we do? They will cut your resources, and if there is a cut in your resources, then in that case you have to manage your own. So, if you are having your own resources, you will not get that much hurt. You will get hurt, but you will not get that much of hurt. But in the case of when you do not have the resources and somebody is playing the politics and your resources are stopped or cut, then in that case you will find yourself into a big problem, and then the negative thought process will start, negative actions will be there irrespective of the situation, in spite of the positive thoughts and positive actions. So, power in an organization is not primarily a phenomenon of this individual is there, it is related to the resource departments. You might be highly intellectual, highly capable, but your area of activity is such which is not the line functions of the manager, then in that case you will not be having that particular importance. So, it is related to the resources departments command and the role departments play in an organization, and the environmental contingencies with which the departments cope. So, therefore, here you will find that it is becoming the more and more important, that is what type of the environment is created that time, and it is also a particular time when the decision making process is going on. Position and responsibility more than the personality and style may determine a manager's ability to influence the outcomes in the organization is there, and therefore, here you will find that it is becoming a very important, that is you are creating your ability and influencing the power of the others are there. However, power is used through the individual political behavior, and therefore, in that case it depends on the individual whether the individual is able to play that particular politics or not. To fully understand the use of power within the organization, it is important to look at the both structural components and the individual behavior. Although power often comes from the larger organizational forms and the processes, and the political use of power involves the individual level and activities and the skills are there. So, using the soft power and politics, how to use managers with the political skills and are more effective at influencing the others, and thus getting what they want for the organization and for their own careers are concerned. So, people use the soft power, and these managers here they honed their abilities to observe and understand the patterns of the interaction and influence in the organization. So, it is very important, that is what sort of the soft power and politics you are using, and when you are using your soft power and politics you are influencing to the organization. Now, some tactics rely on the use of the hard power, and which is the power that stems largely from a person's position of authority is there. So, this is the kind of power that enables supervisor to influence the subordinates with the use of the reward and punishments, allows the manager to issue orders and expect them to be obeyed, or let us say domineering CEO force through the his or her own decision without regard for what anyone else thinks. So, therefore, however, the effective managers more often use the soft power, which is based on the personal characteristics and the building relationships are there. So, these type of the issues they are making this leadership, and therefore, in that case the managers, the leaders, those who are more successful, they want to grow into the career, what they do, they are making the use of this soft power is there. So, using the soft power and politics, even the US military talking about the importance of building relationships rather than using their brutal force. So, therefore, in that case it is always emphasized globally, that is if you want to be a successful leader, please use your soft power. And the former defense secretary Robert Gates, for the instance, says that in the battle for the hearts and the minds abroad, the United States has to be the good at listening to others. So, here it is always this type of the soft power, that is you are listening to others, that will create the more support for you, and therefore, you will be ruling on their hearts and minds. So, rather than the just good at the kicking down doors and the army's new stability operations field manual openly talks about the value of the soft power is there. So, therefore, in that case the soft power has to be used. So, how to increase the power? So, there are the 4 tactics for increasing the power as follows. The enter area of the higher uncertainty is there. One source of the individual or the department power is to identify key uncertainties and take steps to remove those uncertainties are there. So, uncertainties could arise from these stoppages on an assembly line, from the quality demanded of a new product, or when the inability to predict a damage for the new services are there. The another important aspect is once an uncertainty is identified, the departments can take actions to cope with it. By their way of the nature, uncertain task will not be solved immediately, and trial and error will be the needed, which is to be advantage of this department. This trial and error process provides the experiences and these expertise that cannot only be the duplicated by the other departments are there. The another tactic for the increasing power is to create the dependencies there. So, dependents are the another source of the power where these when the organizations that depends on a department or the individual for information, material, knowledge or skills, and a department or the individual will hold the power over others is there, because the top management is dependent on that particular person. So, rest of the people also fail, that is they cannot disturb this particular person. Now here is equally effective and the related strategy is to reduce the dependency on the other departments by acquiring necessary information or the skills when the possible, and so that your department is not a dependent problem. So many times it has been seen that is inter-department rivalries, that it is they are dependent on each other, but are not able to fulfill their requirements. So for example, the sales manager might seek the signing the authority is eliminate salespersons dependent and on the inventory clerk and the shipping the department is there. So here when we talk about this type of these tactics, then the provide the scarce resources. Now, resources are always important to the organizational survival is there. So, departments that accumulate the resources and they provide them to an organization. So, the form of the money, information or the facilities will be powerful. One example described how the university departments with the greatest power are those that often the external research funds by contribution to university overhead. Likewise, the sales departments are the powered in individual firms because they bring in finance resources are there. So, therefore, they provide these care resources. The fourth one is that is satisfy the strategic contingencies. The theory of strategic contingencies says that some elements in the external environment and within the organization are important for organizational success. A contingency could be a critical event, a task by which there are no substitute. So, in a central task that is the independent with many others in the organization, an analysis of the organization and its changing environment will reveal the strategies, the contingencies to the extent that the contingencies are new are not being satisfied. So, there is a always room for a department to move into these critical areas and increase its importance, and the power is there. Now, these power and politics tactics in the organization for increasing the power base, they enter areas of high uncertainty is there, create the dependencies, provide scarce resources and satisfy strategic contingencies, make a direct appeal. While politics tactics for using the power is build a coalition and expand networks, assigning loyal people to the key positions, control decision premises, enhance legitimacy and expertise and create subordinate goals. So, on basis of this you can find out that is what tactics are the political tactics that will be useful for you, and you can adopt that for the betterment of the organization. So, political tactics for in organization requires its both skill and the willingness is there. Many decisions are made through political processes because the rational decision processes do not fit. So, uncertainty or disagreement is too high. Political tactics for using power to influence decision outcomes include the first one is the build coalition and expand the networks are there. So, effective managers develop the positive relationship throughout the organizations, and they spend time taking with the others to learn about their views and build mutually the beneficial alliances and the coalitions. Most important decisions are made outside of the formal meetings are there. Managers discuss issues with each other and reach agreement is there. So, effective managers are those who huddle meeting in groups of the twos and the threes to resolve these key issues. They also make sure their network cross hierarchy, functional and even organizational boundaries. One research project found that the ability to build network has a positive impact on both employees' perception of a manager's effectiveness and the ability of the manager to influence the performance. So, networks can be expanded by the reaching out to the establish the contact with the additional managers and to coping these dissenters and establishing the contact with the additional managers means building good interpersonal relationships based on the one thing the similar liking, trust and the respect is there. Reliability and the motivation to work with rather than these exploit the others are part of the both networking and the coalition building is there. The second approach to the expanding the networks to co-optation is the art of building a dissenter into a one's network, and one example of the co-optation involved an university committee whose membership was based on a promotion and the tenure is there. So, several professors who were critical of the tenure and promotion processes were appointed to the committee. When a part of the administrative process they could see the administration point of view. So, co-optation effectively brought them into the administrative network. The second one is the assign the loyal people to the key positions are there. So, another political tactics is the assign the trusted and loyal people to key positions in the organizational departments. Top managers as well as the departments, their heads often use the hiring, transfer and the promotion processes to place in a key that is the positions people who are sympathetic to the comforts outcome of the department is helping to achieve departmental goals. The leaders frequently use the tactics as we discussed earlier when an outside politics chief was hired to take over a major metropolitan political demand. So, he brought the three assistant chefs with him, and because their thinking and skills were compatible with his goals to transform the department is there. Third one is the use reciprocity, and there is much research including that most people feel some of these obligations to give the something back in the return for the favors other do for them. The principle of the reciprocity is one of the way the factors affecting to influence the relationship in the organizations. When a manager does a favor for a colleague, the colleague feels obliged to return the favor into future. Doing additional work that helps and out other departments obligates the other departments to respond in a future date. As with other political tactics, the managers sometimes we are reciprocity of the sales service purpose that can harm the organization and all the stakeholders are there. So, this enhanced legitimacy and expertise can exert influence in which they have recognized the legitimacy and expertise. This tactics is highly effective when the younger generation of the managers and employees. Today's young workers define power based on an individual's knowledge and skills rather than a position of authority over power. They do not appreciate the strong use of the politics and the expert people to rely on their knowledge in the indulgence the others are there. So, finally, we can say that the managers makes a request that within the task domain of the department and is consistent with the department's interest, other departments will tend to comply. Members can also identify external consultants to other experts within the organization to support their causes there. This is making a direct appeal is there. If managers do not act or ask, they seldom receive. An example of the direct appeal that comes from a drugstore.com where the Jessica Morrison used the direct appeal to get a new to find and a salary increase. So, these Morrison research pay refers scale on pay scale and approaches her that is the boss armed with that the other pertinent informations are there. So, her direct appeal backed up with the research won the promotion and the political activity is effective only when goals and needs are made explicit to the organizations can respond. So, effective political behavior requires sufficient forefulness and the risk taking to act fast and ask for what you need to achieve the desired outcomes are there. This is the case study. please refer this case study, that will help you to understand that is how the organizational power and politics that helps positively. This is the research paper, the politics behind the design projects when space organization and the technology collide. So, this will also give you an idea that is how these the research and dimensions which are affecting the politics in the organization. This is the books Politics in the Organization, that is by the Gerald Ferris and Darren Sith. It will be help you to, that is when it is to be the politics is a positive and when the politics is the negative is there. This and these are the references which you can refer for the further details study in the organization and the politics. Thank you.